IUL is like a financial Swiss Army knife, the dream solution for so many different financial objectives. In this episode, I am going to disclose 10 financial objectives that max-funded IUL can become the dream solution for. Get ready. You're going to be blown away. So I'm Doug Andrew, and I've been a financial strategist and a retirement planning specialist now for north of 48 years. I've been around for a long time. I'm in my 70th year, and no, I don't color my hair. Everybody asks me that on this channel. But as I proceed to give you some insights, I want you to feel free to post a comment, click like or share with another financial advisor. If you're watching this, you may be a consumer, you may even be an insurance professional. So get ready. I'm going to show you why max-funded indexed universal life is one of my favorite financial instruments for all kinds of financial goals. I'm going to go deep into one or two of them, but I'm going to disclose 10 different ways it is the dream solution, and I hope it is for you too. So when I talk about a financial Swiss Army knife, let me just explain that, as you know, a Swiss Army knife has all kinds of different blades and functions. And so I'm going to give you the names of these 10 categories and then go through and give you examples of how IUL can be the dream solution. So as a dream solution, people use it for death benefit. The obvious thing that it has is a death benefit. But a lot of people use it for retirement planning as an alternative to IRAs or 401ks because when it's structured correctly, it blows those out of the water. But also as a college funding savings account, working capital for business, real estate management, as an emergency fund, lump sum capital transfer, estate planning. You talk about pension maximization. If you don't know what that is, I'll explain it. And also tax reduction. So get ready. I'm going to go through each of these. I'll dive deeper on some of the ones that it's used for the most, but you're going to gain insights into opportunities that maybe you didn't know existed before. And stay with me to the end because I want to gift you a copy of my most recent best-selling book called The Laser Fund. That is what I call a max-funded IUL. When I speak to audiences all over the country, many times I'll say, what are some uses for baking soda? And usually the women in the audience might yell out first, well, you can take the odor out of the refrigerator. You can soak in the tub. It takes the pop out of a pot of beans and on and on and on. You know, it talks about 100 uses. Men will say, well, I clean the battery terminals on my car. Yep. But then somebody will finally say, oh, it's good for baking. Yeah, the obvious. So see, life insurance, the obvious is to use it for life, for living benefits, but most people use it for death benefit only. So you don't want to focus on what it is, focus on what it does. It is the only instrument in the Internal Revenue Code that I'm aware of that allows you to accumulate your money tax-free and then be able to access your money tax-free even before the age of 59 and a half without triggering penalties or anything. And then when you ultimately die, anything left in there blossoms, increases in value, and transfers income tax-free. Nothing else does that in the Internal Revenue Code that I'm aware of. The key is to structure it properly and fund it. Now, a lot of people don't know how to do that. A lot of advisors don't. And indexed universal life was introduced in 1997 when interest rates started coming down. And my average return on indexed universal life has been 9.62% ever since 1997. Prior to that was universal life, and my average return was 8.2% up until indexed universal life came out. So I've been experiencing a little bit higher rates of return. But some years I've earned 61%, 153%. But on the average, we'll use 9.6%. You can earn higher, lower. But at 9.6%, rule of 72, you divide that into 72, your money will double every 7.5 years. If you just started with one lump sum of $500,000, it'll double to $1 million, then $2 million, then $4 million, then $8 million in 30 years. I have clients who have done that. So these are the examples of how it can become the dream solution because it provides liquidity, the ability to access your money when you need it, even with an electronic funds transfer phone call. safety, not only of the institution, the multi-trillion-dollar insurance industry is one of the safest in the world, but also safety of principal. Whatever you set aside is protected from loss due to market crashes. But any year you make money, that becomes newly protected principal. That's called lock-in and reset. You will not lose in future years money you made in previous years. A lot of advisors don't know how to do that. Earning predictable rates of return, and they don't have to constantly be pie in the sky, 60% returns or 25%, but averaging, like I have, 9.62%. I like the tax advantages, accumulating, accessing, and transferring my money totally tax-free. So I call it the laser fund because laser is an acronym that stands for liquid asset safely earning returns. This is the book that I talked about. It's my most recent bestseller. It's been flying off of our warehouse shelves, and stay with me to the end of this episode. I want you to claim your free copy of this 300-page book, which is actually 2 books in one. This is 200 pages, 14 chapters with all kinds of charts and graphs. If you learn more by stories, you flip it over and read this one. 100 pages, 12 chapters, 62 chicken soup for the financial soul stories. If you want to use both your right brain and left brain, read both books. This is high concepts coupled with high touch, okay? And you go to laserfund.com to claim your free copy. I'll put that up at the end. So let's go to this metaphor of this Swiss Army knife. One of the most common uses is for retirement planning. Why? Max-funded indexed universal life knocks the socks off of traditional IRAs or 401ks. Why? Ever since 1986 tax reform, it was President Reagan's second term, and he passed the 1986 Tax Reform Act, and ever since then, there are only 3 types of income that Americans pay income tax on a 1040 tax return. Earned income, passive income, and portfolio income. Salaries, wages, rents, leases, interest, and dividends. Simply put, if you have income in retirement that is not one of those 3 types, because IRAs or 401ks fall under one of those 3. If you have income that is not deemed earned passive or portfolio income, there's nowhere on a 1040 tax return to put it. The IRS will know you're receiving it, and they'll know, cut and dried, hands down, it's tax-free. This is not a loop. This has been true as sacred tax-free cash cow in the Internal Revenue Code for 108 years as of the recording of this episode. When we talk about the negative impact of taxes and inflation on people's hard-earned savings, you know, in the year 2021, the various news outlets were in shock when inflation went over 3%, 4.2%, and I just sat back and snickered. I thought, what? If you're not aware, back in the 1980s, after the Carter years where inflation hit 14%, the government decided they couldn't afford to pay Social Security recipients the real cost of living increase, inflation rate. So they changed the way they report inflation, and they compare apples to oranges. They can compare filet mignon steak to hamburger the next year if they want, and they do. So when the consumer price index is reported at 5%, triple that, it's really about 15%. As of the recording of this episode, used cars, real estate, gone up 20%. Gasoline up 50%. And yet they strut around and say inflation's only 5%. Hello. At the true rate of inflation, 15%, divided into the rule of 72, the cost of living will double every 5 years or less. If you can get by on $5,000 a month, you're going to need $10,000 a month. Let me show you the numbers here. So many times people don't understand the negative impact of inflation and taxes. They look at their IRAs and 401ks like it's this sumptuous Subway hoagie sandwich depicted here on the left. They come to me at retirement because at retirement planning is something totally different than maybe what you did for retirement in tax-deferred IRAs or 401ks in the market. And I go, no, don't leave your money there. But I tell them to bring their after-tax statements, and they go, after-tax IRA and 401k statements? I know they don't have them, so I calculate it. After tax, it looks like this. After Uncle Sam and 41 out of 50 states has a state income tax, they gobble up at least a third. So if you have $1 million nest egg, only about $650,000 of it is your money. The rest belongs to the government. Okay? If you're earning 9% on $1 million nest egg, you pull out $90,000, you're only netting $60,000 to buy gas and groceries and prescriptions and golf green fees because you have to give a third of that 9 to Uncle Sam and the state. You're only netting 6. Now, there's also fees there, so you're really not netting that. But I often ask people, golly, were you planning your retirement or Uncle Sam's? So I have to tell them strategies. Even Time magazine in 2008 published an article, Why It's Time to Retire the 401k and Do Something Better Instead. Stephen Gandel, the author of that article, said, the 401k is a financial flop, a rotten repository for our retirement reserves. Now, he was saying because money was in the market. That's the third reason down. My biggest reason, number one, is people are not in lower tax brackets when they retire. If you're in a lower tax bracket when you retire, that means you didn't save very much. Is that why you want to be in a lower bracket? So if you're going to be in a higher bracket, or you agree, like most people do, that taxes will likely be higher in the future, a Roth IRA or 401k will generate probably 50% more in net spendable income at the same rate of return, the same amount in a nest egg, as a traditional IRA or 401k. But 91% of Americans are duped, in my opinion, putting money into traditional IRAs or 401ks. Now, I've never owned an IRA or 401k, never will. I've never owned a Roth, I never will, because a laser fund will knock the socks off of both of those. So let's say you're earning 7.2%, which is the worst rate of return indexed universal life earned from 2000 to 2010 in the Great Recession, when most people were still down 38%. People doubled their money, $1 million doubled to $2 million. So if you started out with $125,000 at 7.2%, okay, it's going to double in 10 years, 7.2 into the rule of 72, to 250. Another 10 years, it doubles to 500, and 500 doubles to $1 million. You could have $1 million nest egg in 30 years at just 7.2%. I've actually been earning 9.6. Your money doubles every 7.5 years. Let's say you have $1 million nest egg earning 7.2. Theoretically, you could pull out $72,000 a year. You pay a third in tax. You're netting $48,000 or $4,000 a month to buy gas and groceries. You think, maybe I can tighten my belt and get by. Because of inflation, what happens? If the cost of living doubles, if inflation's 5%, 5 into 72 means it's going to double in less than 15 years. In 15 years, you're only going to have $2,000 of purchasing power. You're going to need $8,000 a month to buy the same gallons of gas and loaves of bread that $4,000 bought just 15 years earlier. Well, inflation is higher than 5%. In other words, if you went another 15 years, because a lot of people live 30 years after retirement, you're going to need $16,000 in 30 years to buy what $4,000 buys today. Well, let's go to 7.2% inflation. The cost of living will double every 10 years. What about 12%? Okay, every 6 years. What about 15? It's 15% as of the recording of this episode. The cost of living will double every 4.8 years. You're going to need, in less than 10 years, $16,000 a month to buy what $4,000 a month buys today. The only way to combat that is by using max-funded indexed universal life to link your returns to the things that inflate. This is explained in the book I want to gift you. So the biggest dangers that most people face when they retire that causes them to outlive their money is taxes, inflation, and market volatility. We eliminate those dangers with 3 great opportunities. Convert to tax-free vehicles in a max-funded IUL. You link your returns to the things that inflate. So if inflation goes to 10, you'll earn 15. If inflation is 15, you earn 20. When inflation was at 15 in the year 2021, many clients using IUL earned 25%, 61%, even 153%. Yep. And then you use indexing for safety, so when the market goes down, you don't lose. You may not make much of anything that year, but you don't lose. And then you participate when the market goes up. This is not index mutual funds. The 3 greatest strengths of max-funded IUL is liquidity, the ability to access your money when you need it, safety of principal, like I've said, and indexing. You earn predictable rates of return, averaging in that 7 to 10%. So folks, you can see that for retirement planning, it can knock the socks off of traditional IRAs or 401ks that are only tax deferred. Death benefit. Oh my heavens, I could spend an hour on this one. But with death benefit, none of us are getting out of here alive. I mean, out of this life. So when you do pass away, it blossoms. So let me explain this briefly. I'm 70. Now, for every $1 million I would have in my IUL policies, if I died in an accident tomorrow, that million would blossom to $2.5 million and transfer income tax free to my wife, my kids, my grandkids. Nothing else does that. IRAs and 401ks don't do that. People say, well, golly, how much does that cost? Well, nothing's free, but it doesn't cost me anything. It's being paid for with a minuscule portion of money that would otherwise go out the window in unnecessary income tax if I followed the herd and put my money in IRAs or 401ks. I have to earn 15 or 16% on an IRA or 401k to net 10 after tax and fees. I only have to earn 11% to net 10 in an indexed universal life. And that 1% is money that would otherwise go out the window in tax if I followed the herd. Death benefit, oh my heavens, it's the owner of the IUL that gets all the tax-free accumulation. What does that mean? Even if I'm uninsurable, I can own it on my spouse, my kids, my grandkids, a business partner. I've owned IUL policies on my father. My mother didn't qualify. My father-in-law, mother-in-law. My kids own it on me. Do the math. If you socked away $600, $700 a month, $1,000 a month in an IRA or 401k, it would take 30, 35 years at a rate of return of 10 or 11% to finally end up with enough net to have $1 million nest egg. If you bought $1 million life insurance policy on your folks and they're in their 50s or 60s or 70s, and you sock away $1,000 a month into that and they die anytime, you'll get $1 million tax-free instantly. And I can show you by putting that back into an IUL policy for yourself, it'll generate $80,000 to $100,000 a year of tax-free income. Did you just get an epiphany? Yeah, I own insurance on my parents, my in-laws, my kids own it on me. It knocks the socks off of an IRA or 401k. Let's go to college savings and funding. This will knock the socks off of a 529 plan. When you use a 529 plan, it accumulates tax-free only if you use the money for your kids' college education. You wouldn't believe how many people have kids that get scholarships, they don't need it. And so they want to use the money in their 529 to start a business. They're going to have to pay tax. You put it into an IUL, not only will you earn a better rate of return, it'll be tax-free, and if you die, it will be self-funding, it will blossom. But if you don't use it for college, it's still tax-free. You can use it to start a business. Why would you ever mess around with a 529 plan when you have an IUL? Let's go down to emergency fund. Why would you ever leave $50,000 or $100,000 in a bank or credit union in order to have an emergency fund? Because it has a drive-up window? That's not liquidity, that's convenience. Do you know where the bank or credit union is taking that money, 30% of it, maybe up to 40%? They're turning around and taking your money and paying you less than 1% and putting it in insurance companies, and they earn 5% because they don't even link to an index. That's 5 times. Just bypass the middleman. I can access my money out of an IUL with an electronic funds transfer or phone call. Do you know a bank or credit union can say, sorry, you can't have your money out of this savings account for 6 months if push came to shove? Put it in the place where your bank and credit union puts a lot of their tier 1 assets. Emergency funds. Hey, let's talk about working capital for business or for real estate. Now, indexing simplified is this. When you have, let's say, an amount of money in your IUL, let's say you have $1 million accumulated and you can extrapolate from this, the insurance company is paying you interest based upon their general account portfolio, okay? AAA, AA bonds, mortgages on shopping malls and skyscrapers and what have you, they're very conservative. And let's say they're earning 4%. Anytime you want, you can just say, pay me your general account portfolio rate, that's $40,000. Or if you feel bullish about America, you can say, oh, I think the economy is going to do more than 4. So you relinquish that $40,000. Your million has to stay safe in the insurance company. You're giving up the $40,000 of interest, and it funds an options budget for the insurance company. What do they do with that? You can link your return to an index or indices of your choice. The S&P 500, the Dow Jones, the Barclays U.S. Dynamic Balance Index, the Russell 2000. You can diversify among all of them. What happens? Simply put, they go out and buy upside options, which means if you guessed wrong and the market crashes, you relinquish the $40,000, but your million is safe. Your million is not invested in the market. How can the insurance company afford to pay you 8 or 12% or even 61% if the market goes up? Because they buy the options. So if the market goes up to 10 or 12, up to maybe a cap, they will pay you $120,000 because the options double or triple and allow them to do that. But if the market crashes, you do not lose one dime because your money is not in the market. This is phenomenal. This is called indexing. It's not index mutual funds. Index mutual funds are like having your money in the market, and you can lose 30 or 40% like people did in 2008. So this is what I teach in my book. You can diversify with superior investments. 40%, let's say in a 1-year high cap, 40% in a 2-year point-to-point, and 20% in a 5-year. You can learn what these are. Your average return for the last 20 years would be 11.3%. You could put 50% in a 2-year and 50% in a 5-year. The average return, 14%. This is based on actual history. So you can also tell the insurance company, if you really feel bullish about America, hey, instead of just relinquishing the interest on my $1 million, you can use another 7.5% of my $1 million. That would be $75,000. Well, if you're that confident, you're capping your loss so that if you guess wrong and the market goes down, the most you will give up is 7.5%. You won't lose 40%. What happens? The insurance company will pay you 2.7 times whatever the S&P, what the market does. So that's 27, and you subtract this, and you're earning 21% net. People did this and earned 25. Sometimes they chose no cap in March of 2020 because the market crashed 30%. And our agent said link, and a year later the market was up 66%. The fee was 5%, and they ended up getting 61.33%. We had clients with 800,000 that ended up with 1,380,000 1 year later. If the next year the market crashes, they do not lose the $500,000 they made the year before. This is incredible. So you diversify. You own several laser funds. You use 2 or more products or companies. You link to different indices. You utilize various indexing strategies, and you rebalance. Now, I talked about working capital for business. These are some actual statements. This is where a client diversified with 3 and earned, you can't read this, but I'll read it for you. They made 12% on 6,000, another 7.25% on 6,000, and another 61% on this 6,000, okay? So they can diversify. This one did that linking, and they had 872,000. They got 61.33% in the year 2020 to 2021, March to March, and they made $500,000. They ended up with 1,387,000, and they locked in that gate. So let's talk about a business owner that uses this $1 million in his Index Universal Life as working capital. He has $1 million of cash value, and he sees a real estate property that he wants to invest in. So in 2017, he did this. He borrowed $1 million out of his policy. He could have withdrawn it, but he borrowed. Why? Because he used an index loan. They charged him 5% instead of 2%. Why would they do that? That's $50,000, but that means on the $1 million that he left in the policy, he just used it as collateral to borrow from the insurance company. He earned 25% in 2017. That's $250,000. So he made $250,000. They deducted the interest. He netted $200,000 or 20% on his $1 million, while he was using technically the $1 million to make a few $1 million buying and flipping an apartment complex. Hello? Can you do that with anything else? This is working capital for business. So people do it for real estate. You sock away the difference between a 15-year mortgage and a 30-year mortgage into an IUL policy, and you will pay off your house, if that's your goal, 2.5 years faster than sending extra principal payments or a bigger mortgage payment to the mortgage company. Because you sock away the difference in the tax savings, and you'll actually get out of debt 2.5 years faster. People don't do the math. We talk about capital transfer, money sitting in a bank or a credit union at less than 1%. Why would you do that? You get an inheritance, put it here for liquidity and safety. Estate planning, this will increase the estate. You'll maximize what you leave behind with legacy planning. What's pension maximization? If you're a school teacher, and they tell you when you're about to retire, you have a defined benefit pension based on your 30 years of teaching school. You can get $5,000 a month, but there's no survivor benefit. Wouldn't you like to share this with your spouse if you predeceased them? Oh, yeah. Well, then instead of taking $5,000 a month, you take $4,000 a month. And if you die, then we'll keep paying $4,000 a month to your spouse as long as they live. Most people say, yep, I want that one. I want to share it. You just bought the most expensive life insurance policy you'll ever buy. You know what I would do? No thanks. I want to take the $5,000. They'll say, you don't want to share this with your spouse? They want to sell you that policy. They don't call it that. I want the $5,000. Now, you go ahead and live on $4,000. What do you do with the extra $1,000 that the state was going to take from you? You put it into a max funded IUL. And then if your spouse predeceases you, you can marry somebody else and name them a beneficiary. You can't do that with a state, survivor benefit. You can't change the beneficiary. But anytime, say, if I die, it will leave behind a larger amount so that my spouse will be able to go on forever and then leave it behind to the kids. If you choose the survivor benefit and your spouse dies and you die, it's gone. Your kids don't get what's left over. It's done. Why would you ever take a survivor benefit from your pension? So use it to maximize your pension. General tax reduction. So many people are way too top heavy in what I call the purple bucket, yet to be taxed IRAs or 401ks in the market. I go, what are you thinking? Some people have real estate. Some people like annuities or they have pensions, but my favorite is this green bucket, the tax-free one. And a laser fund will knock the socks off of a Roth. It has 6 benefits. Roths only have 2. These are explained in the book. Municipal bonds, they're not popular anymore. Too many municipalities are going bankrupt and they're low yielding. This is what I teach in the book. Do a strategic rollout, not a rollover. You're rolling the money out of this purple bucket and getting it down here to the tax-free bucket. Maybe not all of it, but I would recommend at retirement, no more than 30% of your money still be here in IRAs and 401ks. Many people get real smart and none of it's there. If you have a lot of real estate, no more than 30% of your retirement should be dependent upon rental income. Maybe between 0 and 80% could be in a guaranteed or Social Security or defined benefit pension based on your risk tolerance. I would recommend 40 to 60% of your money be a tax strategy, not even show up on your 1040 tax return. Sound too good to be true? Let me show you an example. We've had people come and they have 2.6 million accumulated and they go, Doug, we think we can pull out 160,000 a year out of our IRAs or 401ks on top of our Social Security or our school teacher pension. We've got 200,000 a year of income. And I go, okay, I do see one problem. Well, what's that? It's all showing up on the front page of your 1040 tax return. They go, you mean there's another way? And I go, yep. See, you're paying $54,000 in tax, and taxes are going to keep going up. That's going to get higher. You're only netting $146,000 to buy gas and groceries. In 5 years, we did a strategic rollout. They still have $200,000 of income, but what's different? $120,000 of it's coming out of the laser fund. The green bucket is tax-free. They only pay $21,000 now a year in tax. They net $178,000. We just made them an extra $30,000 a year. We saved them over their life expectancy between $800,000 to $1 million of unnecessary tax. That's called tax reduction. So, if you're getting epiphanies, let me tell you, please subscribe to this channel. I have over 700 educational videos, and a lot of the solutions are a max funded IUL, what I call a laser fund. But here's what I want you to do. Claim your free copy of this book. And it's, again, 2 books in one. You simply go to laserfund, laserfund.com, or click on the link below. You contribute a nominal amount towards the shipping and handling. I'll cover the rest of that cost, and I will pay for the book. I'll send out a copy of this 300-page book. There's also options there to listen and learn, watch and learn. There's even an 18-hour masterclass. And you can go in there and check out some of the educational webinars and live seminars that we teach. But this is to your brighter future. Hopefully you're understanding why this is the dream solution for so many financial goals.